Hello again. Now in the last video that I did, I was talking about the setup of the action on the guitar, the height of the strings above the fingerboard. Now one of the comments that I got back on that sort of mentioned the fact that sometimes you can pick up a guitar that's not yours, you know, whether you're playing a friend's guitar or you're in a music store, and you pick up a guitar and it just feels wrong, it feels stiff, it feels a little bit alien. And I thought that was quite an interesting point. I thought what I'd do in this video is talk about the sort of factors that can affect the way that a guitar feels to play. The main reason for this is it's helpful to be able to identify when a guitar feels good to you or when it feels different to what you're used to, because it helps you to think about, well, why does it feel the way that it does? Is it a problem? Can I rectify it? Or if it's perhaps it's something that feels good, actually feels better than what you're used to, is there something that you can change about your own guitar? You know, or it's, you know, things to keep an eye open for if you're trying out other guitars, if you're looking to buy a new piece of gear. You know, just basically just all the factors that affect the way that a guitar feels. So as a starting point, let's assume that we're talking about a guitar that's tuned to, you know, standard pitch. It's just using normal tuning, that sort of thing. First thing that you'll notice probably when you play a guitar is the string gauge, how thick the strings are. Now I've done a video elsewhere on my YouTube channel about string gauges if you want to go into this in a bit more depth, but basically the string gauge is how thick the strings are, and that has an influence on how tight the strings need to be tuned to get them up to pitch, and that affects the feel of the guitar in two ways. Firstly, the obvious that the strings feel different under your fingers because they're thicker, because they're a heavier gauge, or perhaps they're a lighter gauge, they're a thinner string than what you're used to. You know, the string gauges are measured in like thousandths of an inch, so the difference might only be a few thousandths of an inch, but it's something that, because you're so used to playing your own guitar with your own choice of string gauge, when you play something different, you can feel that. And the knock-on effect, as I say, is that the strings at a different string gauge to what you're used to will probably be tuned to a different tension, so they're just generally going to feel different on the neck. A heavier gauge string will be tuned a bit tighter, and a lighter gauge string will be tuned a bit looser, because the ratio between string length, string gauge, and the way it affects the pitch. Now that's something you can do something about. So if you play a guitar and it feels fine, but the tension just feels a bit weird, you know, something possibly you could fix just with string gauges. Something else though that affects the tension is what's called the scale length. The scale length is a measurement from here down at the nut to here where the strings go over the saddles at the bridge. Now there's no standard, there's a general sort of range where you'll find used for guitars, you know, 24 and maybe say quarter inches up to say 25.5, somewhere in that sort of range. But there's no accepted correct scale length. You know, they vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. Even within one manufacturer's model range, you might find different scale lengths used on different models of guitar. It affects the way the guitar feels, obviously, because the frets are going to be a little bit closer together. If the scale length's a bit shorter, they're going to be a bit further apart on a guitar where the scale length's longer. So the way that your fingers stretch across the frets is going to vary. You know, I've heard it said that generally speaking, a Gibson scale length, you sort of thing you find on a Les Paul, is a little bit shorter than the sort of scale length you find on a Strat. And a Fender sort of Fender common scale length. You know, I've heard people say, "Oh, I choose to play Fenders because it's a bit harder." You know, it's rubbish. It doesn't make it harder. It just feels different. While we're on the subject of the neck, there's a whole bunch of things on the neck that can affect the way that the guitar feels. Neck profile, for example, the shape of the neck around the back where it fits into the palm of your hand. There's a few general shapes for this referred to as like C profile, D profile, U profile, V profile. You know, they're about, if you think about the capital letters of those shapes, the way that they're shaped describes the amount of curve that you've got on the back of the neck. So a U shape would be relatively deep, sharp curve like that, as opposed to C shape is more shallow curve. Again, there's no standard right way of profiling a neck. Some shapes are more common than others, but a lot of it comes down to feel. Some people really love the shape of a V-shaped neck. Other people don't care for it quite so much. It's just personal preference. But if you find a guitar neck that feels right for you, you might find that's the sort of profile that you err towards. Loads of other factors though on the neck. Just the general dimensions. Never mind the shape. Is it how big is it? How wide is it along the fingerboard? How deep is it? How much wood is there? It all affects the way that it feels. And also on the top of the neck here, the fingerboard. We talk about the fingerboard radius. This is something else I did another video about not that long ago. How curved the fingerboard is. That affects the feel of the guitar. Another factor on the neck to think about is the fret wire itself. And fret wire comes in all shapes and sizes. Some tall and wide, tall and narrow, all sorts of different profiles. And it's very much a feel thing, what feels right to you. If you do a lot of left hand vibrato, you might want something that's a little bit narrower but taller, so you can really dig in behind the frets to help you get that vibrato. It's a personal preference thing. There's no right type of fret wire for any particular style of playing. A lot of it's influenced by the player themselves. You might also have problems with the way that the frets are seated into the neck, and this is something that you can fix. This is a setup thing. Frets should be finished off properly along the edge of the fingerboard. There should be no sharp edges. They should be nicely rolled off, so there's nothing for you to catch your hand on. It should be comfortable to play. If you get a guitar that it feels okay on the fingerboard, but it's a bit sharp around the edges, that's something you can fix through setup. Just get the edges of the frets dressed off. Frets wear out over time as well, so you'll end up with flat spots and so on, and that's something that you might be able to fix by doing a fret dress. Get your luthier at your local guitar store to run fret files over. You can reprofile the tops of the frets. Sometimes the other frets are just so worn they do actually need to be replaced. And fret replacement is quite a useful thing. If you've got a set of fret wire on the guitar neck and it's not quite the profile that you like, these fret wires, they are something that can be replaced. Probably not by you if you're not experienced in doing guitar repair, but for somebody who does that for a living, they'll know how to do it. Need some specialist tools, but you can take these frets out and replace them with a different profile fret wire. So if you want something a bit bigger or a bit smaller, that's the sort of thing you can change after the event. Lastly, something that you might see done on necks is a thing called scalloping. Scalloping basically is the removal of some of the wood from the fingerboard. So between the frets you will actually carve out a shallow sort of channel in the fingerboard. This really just accentuates the fret height. It's something that really does lend itself to using very heavy left hand vibrato, because you've got more space to be able to squeeze the strings down. It's a strange one. It's a difficult one to experiment with, because it's a destructive thing to do to your guitar. To take it to a guitar shop, get them to scalp the neck for you, and then you play it and think, oh, I just don't like that. I know some guitarists who play with scallop necks and they absolutely love it. Personally, I like my left hand vibrato, but not so much that I go for scallop neck. Again, it's personal preference. There's no right or wrong way with a lot of this. Okay, and this brings us on to setup, the way that the guitar is actually set up to play. Another video I did recently, we were talking about string height. There's things you can do down at the bridge to get the guitar action set right. You pick the kind of strings that you use, all the things we've talked about before. Another factor is the shape of the neck. There's a truss rod, metal rod that runs the length of the neck, runs along the length of the neck inside, and you can adjust that to adjust the amount of curve that there is on the neck to compensate for the tension in the strings. So it'll either curve up like that or arch. that should be set straight, or I say straight. A lot of guitarists actually have a very, very slight curve to it, just preference for the way that it feels. But if you're comparing how your guitar feels with another guitar, think about, is that guitar that you're comparing with, set up properly? Is there something that you might be able to adjust in setup that would actually make it play better? So you get a fairer comparison. One last thing to mention, and this is specifically for those of you who play like a stop tail piece or a hardtail type guitar that doesn't have a tremolo unit. When you come to play a guitar with a tremolo, particularly if it's one with like a two-post knife edge type of arrangement, like a Floyd Rose has got, is be aware of whether you're putting your hand actually on the bridge. Now if you've got a stop tail piece, a hardtail guitar, that doesn't matter, you can rest your hand on the bridge all you like. When you're playing something with a tremolo, if you put your hand down on the bridge, you'll actually be pulling the strings tight as you push the trem down over towards the body. It's the equivalent of pulling back on the tremolo arm, and that'll pull the strings slightly tight. So while you're playing, you might find that the guitar sounds out of tune. This can be really frustrating if you're used to playing one way and you start playing guitar with the trem and you find it's out of tune. It's something you can adjust to through your own playing. It's not necessarily a setup thing, and it's not because there's anything wrong with the guitar. It's just you're pushing on the guitar in a place that really you shouldn't be pushing on because it puts it out of tune. So it's a case where you don't so much fix it through setup of the guitar, it's through rectification of your own style. So a whole load of factors that can affect the way that a guitar feels. But you might find a guitar that you really like the sound of it or whatever. When you come to play it, you think, oh, that doesn't feel right. I don't know if I could live with this guitar. Being able to recognise, why it feels different. Is it because the string gauge that it's strung up with just feels wrong? Well, that's something that you can fix. Is it because the neck profile's too fat or too wide for you? Well, maybe that's something that you can't fix, and maybe that guitar's not for you. But understanding the way that the guitar, the different parts of the guitar interact and how they interact with you and how they feel, that's a useful thing to be able to recognise. So that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in another video next time. Bye for now.